Welcome to Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote, where we're covering the all important New York City mayoral election for the next 13 weeks. Why? Because it's the thing that everyone's talking about. What is it going to mean for Democrats? What will it mean for the midterms? What will it mean for Trump and Republicans? All eyes are on New York City. We've got it all covered right here. I'm Cupp. Let's get right to it. Later in today's show, we'll dive into the Democrat strategy in this election and in future ones. But first, let's get to the latest news from the campaign trail. Joining me now is Joe Anuta, a reporter covering City Hall for Politico. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, we got some news today. I was watching CNBC and saw this happen. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries was on with Andrew Ross Sorkin, and he was asked about this newish attack line on Zohran Mamdani over his rent-controlled apartment. Andrew Cuomo, as you know, Joe, has been trying to make a big deal about this lately, arguing that Mamdani shouldn't be taking up a rent-controlled apartment that could go to someone who needs it more. Jeffries had an opportunity to defend Mamdani today and did not. Let's take a listen to what he said.
It's a legitimate issue that has been raised, and the Mamdani campaign is going to have to address it.
Now, Jeffries has not endorsed anyone in this race yet. So, Joe, read the tea leaves for us. What did this answer say to you?
Well, I think there's really two things going on here. I think it's important to keep in mind the historical context here. Hakeem Jeffries and the DSA, of which Zohran Mamdani is a member, they do not get along, to put it lightly. Jeffries has been fighting DSA challengers to more mainstream Democrats in his home turf in Brooklyn for years. There's a lot of bad blood there. Even allies of Zohran Mamdani recently have talked about primarying Hakeem Jeffries. So there's really no love lost there. And I think the second thing why we're seeing a lot more hesitance on the part of Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, these national Democrats, they have a lot more at stake when it comes to how they treat Zohran Mamdani, even though he's the Democratic nominee for the general election. The way that they approach either supporting or not supporting, endorsing, not supporting, is going to be read by Republicans and really Democrats all over the country as more of a symbol of the Democratic Party writ large. Whereas I feel like more local politicians in New York, they don't have that same context attached to how they treat Zohran Mamdani. So I think those two things are really leading to the sort of reticence on the part of Hakeem Jeffries. It doesn't surprise me that he's this hesitant to defend and certainly endorse Zohran Mamdani.
Right. And you talk about sort of the personal animus maybe between Jeffries and the DSA. He could have said, I'm staying out of this. He could have said a lot of things. I'm wondering if you thought also in that moment he remembered he's a national Democrat and he wasn't putting his New York Democrat hat on.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think that's constantly in the back of his mind, especially, Democrats are really trying to find their way out of the wilderness. And I think Hakeem Jeffries is a very careful politician when it comes to, what he says at news conferences. He's very disciplined as far as his messaging. And so that's absolutely weighing on his mind because I think the jury's kind of still out about what direction they're going to go. And he doesn't want to tip a hand that would be harmful to Democrats in competitive House districts all over the country.
That's if he knows. I don't know that he knows where
I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. Yeah.
Gonna go. It's messy. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in the second half of the show. But let's stick with this housing issue for a second. A new piece from your Politico colleague on Mayor Eric Adams's housing push. As you know, housing affordability and availability has been a big issue for New Yorkers over the past few years. And Adams is now out sort of declaring his administration is ahead of schedule in reaching his quote unquote moonshot goal of 500,000 new homes over a decade. And he's crowning himself the most pro-housing administration in city history. I get why he's in the middle of an election, a campaign. But is that really true? It seems like there's some hairiness around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a reason he's doing the crowning and no one else. I think, you know, as with most things, it's much more complicated than that. There's a few things going on. I think you can't deny that they have done some big things on housing. I think their city of yes rezoning, which is what they called it, you know, sought to unlock some housing potential all across the city, and they were successful in pushing that through the city council, which is not always amenable to new development, which might be like the understatement of the century. And so I think they have done a lot, but when the mayor says this moonshot goal, he's including units that are just like purely theoretical at this point, and in a way that's really not comparable to how past administrations tabulated their housing production. You know, most people count this stuff when it's financed. And I used to write about real estate a lot, so I know this process probably more than I ever wanted to. But when the city's financing new units, there's sort of, you know, getting the loans set. They have the, you know, the land costs and the properties purchased. It's all planned. That's typically when a unit is counted as, hey, we did this, even though it's going to be built down the road. We got all the ingredients together and got it ready to pop. What the mayor's doing is counting stuff that's not even to that stage. It's like, oh, we rezoned a neighborhood. In theory, this many more units could be built. Therefore, I'm going to say I built them.
So a bit of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. And in some cases, it's even more theoretical than that. It's not even a rezoning. It's, hey, we would like to pass this rezoning, but it hasn't gone through the council, which, as I alluded to earlier, is not the biggest champion of new development. It's governed by, you know, these members who they just have very tough politics when it comes to this. Neighborhoods in New York don't like big, tall buildings. And so these are the same people that elect the council members, and they, you know, bring their constituents' concerns to the larger body. And so it can be hard to get some of these deals through. So I think there's a lot of overstatement going on here.
Well, good context. I'm glad you did that for us. Let's stay on Adams. He's busy. He was at the Manhattan Institute, a right-leaning think tank, pushing a new Compassionate Interventions Act, I think meant to assure conservative voters that he's cleaning up the streets. He's vetoed a bunch of bills recently. He's touting those housing wins, quote unquote, and a drop in gun crimes. Will voters see this as a man of action, or as a man who waited until the last minute to take on some of the city's biggest problems?
I mean, he certainly is more active recently with a lot of stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, you know, it's under the sort of banner of normal city hall goings on, but it clearly seems to be geared towards his reelection campaign. I would put the canceling of the Elizabeth Street Garden development, and he canceled this very controversial healthcare plan for retired municipal workers as even more populist measures he's taking to try and boost his reelection. But I think his problems are largely divorced from these issues. I think a lot of voters, the reason his polling is so bad and his approval ratings are so bad is because of the corruption allegations that really have been swirling around him and top officials for most of his tenure, and his relationship with Donald Trump, which I think a lot of New York City voters, Democrats, take umbrage to.
You wrote recently, just quickly before I let you go, you wrote recently about Adams's refusal to get out of this race, and we've talked about that a bunch on this show. Cuomo the same, Sliwa the same. They're not getting out. But I'm wondering, since you cover City Hall and you're around people around Adams, is the push for Adams specifically to drop out, is that from like business leaders? Who's putting the most pressure on him to do that?
Yeah, I think to find the source of the push, I think you look to who's most freaked out about Zohran Mamdani becoming mayor, and that's clearly the business community. I mean, Mamdani's really he's getting a lot of institutional Democratic support. You know, a lot of the unions are supporting him. So yeah, it's definitely coming from the business community.
Which makes some sense. Yeah. Joe Anuta, thank you so much for joining us. And please come back with more of your reporting over the course of the next 3 months. There's going to be a lot to cover.
Of course. Thank you.
Great. And we'll be right back with more Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote, in a minute. We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote, where we're following the New York City mayoral election with a laser focus. Joining me now for the bigger picture is Cillizza, an independent news creator on Substack and YouTube, and a NewsNation political analyst. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hello, friend. I'm glad to be
Yeah,
here.
astute Battleground viewers will remember Chris was a regular guest on Battleground 2024 or whatever
I miss it.
we're calling the original.
I'm already nostalgic for it. I'm nostalgic for
I
the
know.
last presidential campaign. That suggests I have a sickness.
I think we all do in this business. We must. All right. Before we get into some of the nitty gritty, I just want your 30,000-foot view. From your point of view, the New York City mayoral race is important because.
Well, I mean, you don't need to even take my word for it. Donald Trump talks about Zohran Mamdani basically every single day. And he may talk about Zohran Mamdani more than he talks about any other Democratic politician in the country. You know, I mean, now a bunch of that is strategic, right? Trump wants to make a guy who is a Democratic socialist a face of the Democratic Party. Part of it is geographic bias. Donald Trump spent his entire life up until 2 years ago as a resident of New York City. And as much as he runs down New York City, he still pays attention to what's going on there. But I do think for a party, Esty, that is in a pretty dark place politically in the Democratic Party, I always say, like, look, they don't have control of the White House. They are in the minority in the Senate. They're in the minority in the House. They don't have a majority of governorships in the country. They don't control the majority of state legislatures in the country. Zohran Mamdani is the brightest spot, I think, by far for the Democratic Party between, November 5th, 2024 and today. And so to me, that makes him worth talking about, even if Trump ignored him. I mean, not to mention New York is the biggest city, the biggest media market. You know what I mean? Like
I do.
The mayor of New York is always going to matter. There's a reason that we've had, Bill de Blasio. People forget this. Bill de Blasio ran for president. Rudy Giuliani ran for president. Like,
Michael Bloomberg.
LaGuardia. Like it's always been like you're more powerful than just a random U.S. House member, and you're probably as powerful, at least in the public eye and the attention economy, as a senator in a lot of ways. So it's always going to matter. I think it matters more because of who this guy is, Trump's connection to New York and his focus on him, and then where the Democratic Party is. What they need they need the energy the guy has. It's a question of how much do you take from him, how much do you embrace him. And you're seeing that back and forth thing with people like Hakeem Jeffries and others.
And I want to unpack a lot of what you just said, but first, you're in DC, and from up here, it feels like, as you said, like DC is really watching what's going on in this race. I mean, I just saw John Kennedy, a colorful congressman from Louisiana, a senator from Louisiana, on Fox News last night talking to Sean Hannity about Mamdani.
Yeah,
as you said. Trump is weighing in. You've got lots of national figures, for all the reasons that we know, using this election for, political reasons. But just living in DC, are you hearing people in DC talk about this race?
Oh, tons. Context matters. It's 2025, right? It's not 2026, and it's certainly not 2028.
Election year.
There's not, if you're into politics, like, not everyone in Washington. I have a few friends who don't care about politics, or they're tangentially aware of it, but most people are here for it's a company town, right?
Yeah, right.
If you care about politics and campaigns, you've got the New Jersey governor's race, which, is interesting. You've got down by you got the Virginia governor's race, but then other than that,
and
neither of those races are terribly engaged at this point. And then you have the New York mayoral. And so I think it benefits from that. And again, even if Andrew Cuomo, who is obviously a known commodity in Washington, even if Andrew Cuomo had won the primary, I don't think you'd have nearly the amount of interest. Because be like, oh, Andrew Cuomo, he's going to be mayor, then he's going to run for president. It's the newness of Mamdani. It's the youth.
Yes.
And you know what? Honestly, some of it is the beliefs, right? He clearly is. I mean, the guy's a Democratic socialist, right? He is clearly to the left of lots of people in the Democratic Party. I know he's trying to get away from it, but this is a guy who actually did speak about defunding the police and abolishing ICE. And, even what he ran on during the campaign about free buses in grocery stores. These are not broadly held views in the Democratic Party. So he is a fascinating character, right? I mean, he's exotic, different, No one had heard of him before, probably 2.5 months ago. So it's that coupled with, I think it is a little bit of a political vacuum. There's not that much interesting happening. And this is very interesting. And then again, I go back to what I said before too, Essie, because I think it matters. The Democratic Party in Washington has no idea what it's supposed to be or do. Yeah. They are looking for people to show them the way. There isn't an obvious leader. I mean, Jeffries and Schumer to some extent, right? But neither of them, Jeffries is the minority leader, not the Speaker of the House. Schumer is not someone I think that, again, the minority leader, and also not someone that I think Democrats want to be a national party figure.
Yeah.
So I do think there's this interest, this huge amount of interest in him in Washington and among anyone who cares about politics.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, you just said so much. The Democratic Party is a mess. There's really no other way to put it. Their polling is underwater. They're fighting over how to fight Trump, if to fight Trump.
Yep.
There are internal battles over messaging and ideology. Should we go to the left? Should we go to the middle? Generational battles over power and passing the baton. And Mamdani does feel like the bright spot. Do you think Democrats should use him as a roadmap?
Yes. Donald Trump and Republicans are going to use Mamdani against Democrats. I mean, whether you disavow Mamdani or you don't, he's still going to attack you. You know what I mean? Like it's not like Donald Trump's going to be like, oh, well, Andy Bashir in Kentucky said that he doesn't support Mamdani, so I better not.
I'll lay off.
Right. Yeah. My view is like, it's going to happen anyway. Embrace the stuff that fits with your vision of what embrace the use of social media, embrace the anti-establishment, and learn the lessons from it. The thing I wrote right after Mamdani won the primary was, if I'm a member of the Democratic establishment, I'm very nervous today. And I learn the lessons. It doesn't mean you have to support everything the guy believes, but learn the lessons. He clearly is onto something. And
the question is whether it works in New York City alone or everywhere. And stay right here, because I want to get to that exact point after the break. A lot more with Cillizza, Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote, coming up. Back here on Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote, one more time with Cillizza. Chris, before the break, we were talking about how Democrats should look at Mamdani or any bright spot and say, let's go with this, because nothing else is working right now. The flip side of that is, and you mentioned Andy Bashir, he's a perfect example of like a red state Democrat that might be very nervous about a Mamdani becoming the face of the party. And John Kennedy said last night on Hannity, the mainstream wing of the Democratic Party is scared to death of the loon wing. And that's because Democrats have been losing voters over some far left policy that just isn't popular everywhere. Maybe it's popular in Portland or Minneapolis, but it's not popular in Democratic pockets where they used to be winning voters and aren't anymore. So are progressives like Mamdani, AOC, Bernie, are they a problem for a party who's been bleeding moderates and independents?
They might be. The thing I say, though, Essie, is like, I remember, and Trump may be sui generis, and, comping anything to him may be useless. Let me say that at the top. But I remember in 2015 and 2016, all these Democrats, once it became clear he was going to be the nominee, these Democrats predicting that Hillary was going to win 420 electoral votes, and no one would vote for Donald Trump, and all the things he said, he was way too, he's not even really conservative, but tonally, he was too conservative. And then he won, right? And then he won again. Now, I know he lost in between there, but I just wonder a little bit if we broadly, I don't want to lump you in there, but if we, the political world broadly, are still caught up in this kind of like old dynamic of like, well, if you're going to run as a Democrat, you're either going to be a liberal or a moderate. And if you're going to run as a Republican, you're either going to be a social conservative or a fiscal conservative or a moderate. I don't know that voters think like that anymore.
Right.
It's like, to me, why does Mamdani win? And again, I think you made this point and you can't emphasize it enough. New York City ain't a swing area. Right?
Yeah.
But it is not a good example of where Democrats need to win back the Senate, to win back the House, or to win in 2028. Now, that said,
right.
I don't know that it's really necessarily like his policies. I think it's more of like this authentic vibe. Like he's being who he is. He's not running the like empire, you know, the campaign of Andrew Cuomo. Like, well, okay, we're going to move the battle star into position here, and like it's kind of like fun and free, and it seems like he seems like a pretty good dude, and he's meeting people. And yes, he's very liberal, but I don't know, like that's my thing with AOC. Like, just as an example, like I do a 2028 rankings, not to get too far afield, but I put her number 1 right now. Because yes, she's more liberal than the average voter. And yes, her in a general election may be a problem for Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
But there's like an actual energy. And if I needed someone to get 10,000 people to show up tomorrow at an event, I'd pick her or Bernie Sanders or Zohran Mamdani. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to win the presidency, but it's something for a party that, I can't emphasize this enough, is in the worst place it has been in brand-wise in decades. Gallup, Wall Street Journal, CNN, all of these polls have been doing this stuff since the early 1990s, and all of them have Democratic Party favorability lower than ever before measured. If you're going to ignore that, I think that's very much whistling past the graveyard if you're Democrats.